If we don't handle our independence very well, colonizers will come back in the form of investors. And this was a quote taken from an interview with Simon Mwanza Kapipwe, the former vice president of Zambia between 1967 to 1970. This is Tuesday's episode of the Toya Talks podcast. If you do not recognize my voice because it is your first time here, my name is Toya Washington. I am the founder and creator of the Toya Talks podcast and platform, and each and every Tuesday we gather here and we create a safe space to share as I teach, guide and educate Black women how to navigate the world of work safely and in turn highlight the path of our success. And for those of you who are returning avid listeners, welcome. Thank you for all your love and support. And I will never stop thanking you because I truly believe that the word of mouth has been my most powerful marketing tool, as I've not spent not a pound on marketing, but the growth of the podcast is because of each and every one of you who listen and who share and who navigate people to the podcast and the platform. So thank you so much. The First Daughter episode continues to really touch your hearts, and I'm still receiving messages about that episode. So I want to say thank you, and I will get to everybody and I will respond. Okay, so I'm thinking where to start. Let's start here. So last week Tuesday, I went into an office for the first time in 3 years. Now, some of you will be shocked to hear it, especially if you don't follow me on socials, because on Instagram I did say that I was going in. And to be fair, my boss didn't actually say she wanted me to come in. She just said it would be nice to meet me face to face. And I kind of felt as though I'm one of these people, if I know that, I have a challenge or some type of phobia or whatever the case is, I'm always going to try as much as possible to deal with it head on. And I kind of felt like because I hadn't been in an office before, I had built up all this anxiety. So I wanted to confront that anxiety and just go in and see how I felt. And the fact is, it's an exception, not the rule. And for me, it's part of my office navigation. You see my face, you see my face final. You can never say, we never met you. That type of thing. And I feel like, for me, I feel like if you are younger, from that younger generation who haven't had the opportunity to really understand the dynamics of working in an office, I think it's really imperative that you work in an office, because you're not going to understand office politics and how to navigate work if you've never ever been in an office before. Now, some of us who have basically, raised ourselves from a work standpoint, having gone into offices Monday to Friday, given our heart and soul and really, been embroiled in the world of work, we understand what it is now that we've made this transition from Monday to Friday to remote or to hybrid. It's a big deal. Like, when I really thought about it and I sat back and I was like, commercially, it's a massive deal. Monday to Fridays is not accepted in certain industries. And now if you're an investment banker, now that's a bit different, especially if that type of role, that type of financial role, you are meant to be in the office, and that's different. I'm talking about the roles where you're not, it is an imperative to the business that you're in the office, which is every other role, right? Unless you are, I don't know, frontline staff, NHS, that's when obviously you have to physically be in a hospital or a medical institution. I get that. But for some of us who are not, in that group, working from home, being remote, hybrid working, it's huge. This is an opportunity for you to really embody work-life balance in a way that has never been done before. Let's be honest. I know they're doing this study on a 4-day week so that potentially people can work Monday to Thursday, but it's still that need to be in the office and have that face time that really pisses me off, because I'm going to get into it a bit later. But anyway, I ended up going into office, and I don't know if I've ever told you guys, but within the team, there was only two consultants. It's me and another lady. Now, in other teams, they have their own consultants, but for what we do, it's just two consultants, and then we've got a few other perm members of staff, me and another lady, and we're both Black. we're the only black people in this division, and we're the only black people in the team. And God's so kind, we get on really, really well. There's that understanding, and we're very, we're very aware of kind of the dynamic of the team. And, now and again we have chats. We're both very experienced consultants, and it's actually really lovely to see someone in my profession as a black woman, because my profession is heavily dominated by non-black people. So every other, I'm not used to seeing black women as commercial contract consultants. So it's actually really, really nice to be able to kind of work with somebody and have that understanding of how the dynamic of the team works. Anyway, so I had messaged my colleague and my fellow consultant, and I said to her, listen, and I messaged her over IM. I said, if you're going to go in, I'm quite happy to go in, but I don't particularly want to go on my own unless, you're there as a consultant as well. It just makes sense. And she was like, Toya, I was just about to message you too. Anyway, we ended up swapping numbers because she's also been in the office before, which I didn't realise, but she's been there before. So ended up going down to London. And for those of you who don't know, I've moved out of London. I moved out in April this year, 2022. So I only go to London, for example, if like I'm meeting friends, or if I'm going to West Green Road to collect my meat, fish and chicken, if I'm going to Turnpike Lane, things that would draw me there on the weekend. Otherwise, in the week, typically I don't, unless I have like a medical appointment, and that's different because I haven't changed doctors yet. How do we feel about changing doctors to doctors outside of London? I'm not really comfortable with that because it's that whole medical ignorance about black women and our pain threshold and understanding kind of what we go through medically. And I kind of feel like whilst London doctors aren't always the best, there is that likelihood of meeting a fellow black person who's a GP, and I like that. Whereas outside London, I don't get to see that. Like some of the doctors I've looked at possibly changing to, there's not one black doctor in sight, and I just kind of think, oh, come on, Anyway, I digress. So, got to the office, and again, it was a hullabaloo, security, ID, and I get it, we're consultants, right? So, fine, whatever. Boss picks us up from downstairs. It was really lovely to see her. She's really, really lovely. She's a nice lady. I've got a lot of time for her. And we go upstairs, and my boss had already, because you have to pre-book the seats. Listen, I don't get involved in all of this. So we sat down doing work, and I'm going to be really, really honest with you. I don't know how I was working in an office Monday to Friday, because the noise level, I'm just not used to the noise, the different smells I was smelling in the office. It was horrible, and it was like so many people. And even on the train coming into London, it wasn't so bad because I managed to get into London about 10 o'clock. So I passed the rush hour, and that was my thing. If you want me to come in, it has to be after rush hour because I'm not doing that whole thing. That's what I've escaped London from. So yeah, it was the smell. I saw a few like tea and biscuit brigade people, and if you don't know, the tea and biscuit brigade is the people who congregate in the kitchen and take forever and a day to make their tea and coffee, especially if they've already got a hot tap. So I don't know what they're waiting around for. And they usually put money in a pot for biscuits, rich tea biscuits, if they're feeling fancy, custard creams, and even some digestives to dunk in their tea. And they stand and congregate there and waste as much time as possible. And in a day, they can go there up to 15 times, nursing this tea and coffee, the stale tea and coffee, just part of the work culture. For me, it was an overwhelming noise, and I didn't get any work done. Nothing. I was just typing email, but never sent any. It was just, I found it very disruptive. And it was the stench, that carpet stench. It was weird. It was like you have to beg them to open a window, and it's like the air conditioning hasn't been on for a while, so it's that stench. Then you go into the toilet and it smells of damp. It was just disgusting. I was like, I'm not coming back here again. I'm not coming back in the office. So, yeah, I just found it a lot. And the microaggressions were very present in a way that, to be honest, is quite exhausting. So me and the other consultant, we look nothing alike. The only similarity is that we're the same height. Yes, we are both black. I have long braids to my bum. She was wearing a shoulder length wig. You know, we don't look alike. And I don't have to say this to you all because we all know as black women, we do not look alike. So my colleague said to me that when I had gone to the toilet, obviously there were other colleagues from the team that were there. Bearing in mind, when we have team meetings, we all put our cameras on. And one of them approached and said, "Oh, are you Toya?" And she says, "Well, no, I'm not Toya." And then she says her name. And then obviously I come out, and to that same person, I went to say hello to them because obviously I recognise them on the camera when we have team meetings. So I was like, "Oh, hi, I'm Toya, how are you?" And the person's like, "Oh, Toya, da, da, da," because this particular person as well, there's a project where I've had to get some like historical information from. So you can imagine it's more than once he's seen me and my face on camera. And I've been there for a few months now, so already weekly he sees my face on camera. So then when me and the consultant left, she told me about it. She says, you know, it's that type of microaggression that really puts me off going into the office. Like, it's the assumption that all black women look alike. And even if he wasn't sure if I was you or not, Toya, he could have introduced himself and allowed me to do the same. But it's that assumption that because you're black, you look alike. And also, from my perspective, I said to her, you know what it is? They don't give us enough. It's the microaggressions as well. But I think also what it is they don't even take the time to see us. They don't take the time. Because if you really saw us, you would know we don't all look alike. I find that often in organisations I've worked in the past, even face to face, they don't really look you in the eye, some of these people. And I don't know if it's being intimidated. I don't know if it's a way of not fully accepting your presence, you know, in an organisation or in front of them. I don't know what that is. But I took it as an offence that just because we're two black women, the assumption is we look alike. And I said to her, it's the blatant ignoring that there could possibly be black women who do not look alike, in the way that we wouldn't make an assumption as black women that all white people look alike. They do it to us. Some of them do it to us in a workplace, and I personally find that very uncomfortable, because if you do not see me, that means you've already decided that I shouldn't be here. And if I shouldn't be here and you don't see me, what next? You know, it was just for me, I just found it really strange, especially, you know, it's just weird. Anyway, I wanted to share that, but I guess my takeaway point was I definitely feel as though I need to push myself a little bit, but going into the office is not productive for me. I'm not productive. I'm not at all. So, you know, I continue to be a hybrid worker. I told my boss today that, you know, for me, I found it a lot. And I was really honest with her. I said, I have really bad anxiety because for the last 3 years, I've worked from home. So for me coming in, it was important that I did it to push myself. Also, you know, put a face to the name with you. But, you know, for me as a consultant, it's always about delivering. And that was a day where it was not productive and therefore I didn't deliver. And when I phrased it like that, she was like, you know what, I completely understand. I'm just so happy that you came to meet me because I really wanted to meet you. Now, if I had to make that sacrifice of not producing any work that day, you know, pushing myself a bit in my anxiety, I did all of those things because I know I'm navigating. So if you're consciously navigating, to me, that would be the right thing to do, because now she's got it in her mind and she's made a point in her mind. You know what? Toy didn't have to come in today. There was actually no real reason for her to come in. And she came in purely because, you know, she wanted, I wanted to meet her. But outside of that, there was actually no real reason for Toya to come back in. I guarantee you, between now and the end of the contract, she will not ask me to come in again. There's just no reason. And my suppliers are not based in London, so it doesn't make any sense. But, sometimes I definitely think that you do have to come out of your comfort zone a little bit. And it's almost like the invisible point score. The invisible point score where there's now a point that I have gained from doing that, because she's realised that it wasn't as easy as just coming in. There was a hurdle that I had to go through to come in. And I had to pay almost £50 on the train as well. Like, it's a lot of money, although my business paid. It's not the point. It's still money that's being paid out for no reason. And it re-emphasised for me, when I have recruiters call me, I had a recruiter call me today for a role, literally paying the same amount that I'm getting now, but it's an additional contract. And I'll be honest, I can take on more than one consultancy at a time. I have no problem with it. And being a contractor, that is the perks of being a contractor. You're not wedded to one contract. Insofar as, there's no exclusivity in your contract, you can work for as many organisations as you want as a consultant through your limited company. So this particular organisation had called me. Well, it was an agency that called me for a particular role, and this agency is very niche, and they had a role. The role sounds really good. The money's amazing, and they were like, "Yeah, they want you to come in 3 days a week," and I was like, "Why?" I said, "The supply's based in the office." They said, "No." So I said, "What am I doing that for?" They said, "Oh, they want some FaceTime." I said, "Well, what were they doing during the pandemic and lockdown? Were they not remote?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Why am I coming in?" And then he called me back, because he said he wanted to check a few things. Called me back and said, "Oh, there's also a junior member of staff that they want me to train." And I'm thinking, hang on, the training doesn't have to be 3 days a week in the office. That doesn't make no sense to me. I could stomach 1 day a week. I could even try. For me, my minimum is kind of once a month, but depending on the project, I could stomach once a week. But they have to pay for my travel. If I drive, they have to pay for my petrol, and I also have to pay for any accommodation if I have to come. Do you understand? Like, I'm no longer at the mercy of an organisation anymore to determine the frequency in which I attend an office. I don't care if I'm contracting or perm. I'm not doing it. Like, 3 days a week is not remote, and you're advertising this role as remote. That's not remote. 2 days a week at home. That's hybrid. And this is why I say to people, if you're applying for jobs or you're in an organisation that's going hybrid, you need to be specific about what hybrid means, because saying to somebody 4 days a week in the office and 1 day at home, that's considered hybrid. That is, because there's 5 days in a working week. So that's how they look at it. But yeah, I think my point of saying this is, having gone into the office, it was like a little bit of a reset for me to see how I reacted to it. And I didn't particularly react very well. I got home as well, I was exhausted. I could have slept for 4 days and 4 nights. I was like, what the hell is this? And what I don't get is we were going into the office Monday to Friday. How was we doing it? And every time I come on my period, I'm thinking, how was I going into the office? How was I pushing through the period pains? And then it just reinforced everything that I've learned over the last 2 years, that actually, as an employee, as a consultant, as a contractor, we hold the leverage. We do. And when you are being offered a role, you have to negotiate. It's not just about negotiating the money. And I do talk about this on the salary negotiation masterclass. It's not just about the money. I also talk about negotiating other things as well. So, for example, how many days a week you're working in the office. And when they try to make it as though that's a benefit, it's a mutual benefit to be able to work from home. And the reason it's a mutual benefit is because you're in your own environment, you're using your own electricity, they're not paying for it. And for me, I don't know about some of you guys, my productivity levels are heightened when I'm working from home. Now, equally, there is a balance. I have to take a nap. There is an hour in the day where I have to take a nap, and I just have to. And I don't know if it's the long COVID, I don't know what it is. But when we're talking about work-life balance, it's more about being able to have a private life, have a home life, have a working life, and find the balance between the both, so that you're not giving work more than you need to, i.e. working crazy hours. And yeah, the odd late nights here and there is fine. But I personally don't want to spend the majority of my life on the train, having gone into the office and coming home. There is absolutely categorically no way I will ever work Monday to Friday in an organisation going in for FaceTime. It just doesn't wash anymore. That being said, in America, there has been a health emergency. Biden has spoken, and I do need to actually have a look at what he has said. But the health emergency is the monkeypox. And I'm going to really encourage people to be really, really careful, because I've been seeing footage on social media of people with monkeypox getting on the train in America. I don't know what that is. I do not know what it is. And then monkeypox, I thought were like chickenpox. It is not. You've got like these big bumps oozing. Ugh, it's disgusting. God forgive me. But between COVID, with the two variants that are running rampant in the UK, and monkeypox, where we have had a couple of cases here in the UK, I think people just need to be careful. I have started to see people wear their face masks as well, so I think I'm going to start wearing mine as well. And as we enter winter, I just want everyone to shine their eyes. Don't wait last minute before you're stocking up on certain things. We are in a pandemic still, despite the fact that in the UK they are not talking about the admission numbers in hospitals. But we know it's happening. We know, there's one guy that works in my workplace currently, and he's off with COVID. And apparently this is the third time he's got it, and this one he's got it bad. And whilst people are talking about vaccination and stuff, and they're trying to push the booster for the winter, the reality is, especially in the UK, people have lost trust in the government, and people have lost trust in what they say. So when you're encouraging people to go and get a booster, people are not really going to... I don't see how they're going to encourage people in the uptake of that booster. I personally don't get it. I'm unvaccinated. I did have COVID in December 2021. It was a lot. I'm still having the long COVID. But one thing is for sure, I am so happy that I did not take the vaccine, because I feel like you're always going to be catching up with the boosters. And every country has a different rule about certain things. And a lot of countries are now very laxed about the need for vaccination. So now a lot of people have pumped themselves with chemicals. And for me, and I've always said it, the vaccine is still on trial. It's still a trial drug. So there's no way Toya's going to put it, no. And I'm not criticising anyone that's had the vaccine. I have family and friends who have had the vaccine. My question has always been, are you comfortable with the level of research that you have done to justify the decision to take the vaccine? They all tell me yes. So what's my business? But I just think going into winter, we just need to be really careful. Not just in the UK, but internationally. Monkeypox is on the rise. And so is COVID. And despite what the media may say to you, the reality is this winter would be a winter of reckoning. And you know how it is in the UK with winter. Winter comes like karma due to the colonisation and the behaviour of the British Empire in its hand in slavery. That's how winter be coming around here. Like a big dose of karma. So everyone should be careful, please. I really want to get this message out to all my listeners, because I know that this is not something that this information isn't easily accessible. And often we find, especially with medical care, I don't know how it is in other countries, but I know here in the UK, as a black woman, I'm having to convince the doctor to test me for certain things. I'm having to self-diagnose and then ask for a formal diagnosis of certain things. You will recall, if you follow me on social media, that initially I was told I had PCOS. Then I was told I had endometriosis. Then I was told, actually, we don't think you have PCOS or endo. And I had to request, and again, it's about knowing that you are able to do these things. I asked for a transfer of hospital. I was being misdiagnosed at North Middlesex Hospital, and I had a situation where I had an endoscopy, and I was not put under. I was not given any type of medication to ease the pain, and these people almost killed me in that hospital. I had my bum at the bottom of the bed, and by the time they had finished what they were doing, my bum was all the way at the top of the bed because I was in so much pain. The needle that they tried to put in my vagina, I've never seen anything like it. And to then be told, why didn't you opt to be put under? And I said, I didn't even know that was an option. That was not an option that was given to me. Long story short, when I had spoken to a doctor after that procedure, the doctor recommended that I make a formal complaint. So if the doctor is recommending I make a formal complaint, clearly, something is wrong. But all of this I say to reinforce the point that I find us as black women, we are mistreated by the NHS. A lot of us pour a lot of money into the NHS. We do. We do through our taxes. I know how much I pay in tax. I know how much I pay in tax through my business. And how much is taken at source. It's a lot, man. It's a lot. So when I'm accessing certain public, public services, I expect to get service. I do. I expect to get it. And I will go a step further and say, whilst you deserve it, the reality is the NHS has never been able to, number one, deal with the sheer numbers trying to access the NHS. That's number one. Number two, as black women, we know that how medicine is taught is, by its nature, especially when it comes to things relating to black women, is racist. The idea that black women or black people have a higher tolerance level, and that's based on what? That's based on misconception rooted in racism. That's what it's based on. And then what tends to happen is then as black women, when we access the NHS, we are mistreated and misdiagnosed. So for 6 years, I was being gaslit into believing that it wasn't so bad. Or for the first 2 years, that there was nothing wrong with me. I want to go on record to say, painful periods is not normal. Your periods are not supposed to be painful. I started my period when I was 12. And I'm telling you right now, I never had a day of peace when it came to the period. When my period was up and running, that was it. I remember being hunched over, walking to the bus stop with my friends, trying to help me get on the bus because I was in so much pain. And that was at the age of 12. And I think a lack of education about menstrual cycles, about endometriosis, PCOS, fibroids, you name it, that lack of education, I feel, has kind of affected us because a lot of things could have been, diagnosed earlier. And I think a lot of it also comes from fear as well. And I wish my parents had taken me to the doctors rather than just see it as part and parcel, the pain as part and parcel of having a period. I now know that that's not the case. Periods are not supposed to be painful. So I say this, and I have to caveat it by saying that if you can afford anything designer, you can afford access to private healthcare. You shouldn't have to, but if you are worried about your health, and in my case, I was really worried about my periods. My periods were heavy, smelly, and full. You understand? How can I have my car seat upholstered? My A1, I had to get it upholstered because there were times when I'd leaked. How many times am I going to keep washing it before you know that blood is penetrated deeper than surface level? So I had to pay to have it upholstered. That tells you how much how heavy my period was. It was really heavy. And I still remember a time in my 20s where I was on my period. It was so heavy and I went to work and it was just so heavy. And I deliberately never sat on the train because I didn't want to leak. And then when I got to work, I sat down and obviously I leaked. And it was just so embarrassing. And luckily for me, I had a really lovely colleague at work and she helped me. She bought me leggings from Primark, and then that was a whole hullabaloo to get me to the toilet so nobody would notice. But it was traumatizing because then I'm having to explain, to my boss at the time, I've got to go to the toilet because I've just leaked. And them looking at you like, oh God, and it's not our fault, if you have a heavy period, you have a heavy period. But it's about also getting to the root of it. I have since been diagnosed with fibroids. I have 2 fibroids. They're located in a place that is, not concerning to the doctors. It's not near my fallopian tubes or anything like that. They haven't grown any bigger than my diagnosis last year. They're just there. Now, that was through the NHS where I got that diagnosis after 6 years and bullshit. Then obviously I went private because one of my friends said to me, Toya, it doesn't just stop there. You have to monitor those fibroids every 6 to 12 months. So I did that, and again, they basically told me the same thing. I was able to see the fibroids on the ultrasound because that's how they are able to identify the fibroids. And again, my mood swings are so bad. You know, it's just a lot for me. It is literally like a whole episode during my period. Kate always knows when my period's about to start. My mood changes. I just become a different person. And I then had asked if I could have, because my hormone testing had already been done through the NHS, but something just said to me, you know what, it's not going to be enough. Luckily for me, when I went private, they suggested doing hormone testing. So my hormones were tested, and basically my THS levels were high. So I believe that's the thyroids was a bit high. Now, when I had this same test with the NHS, it was within an acceptable tolerance. But in the hospital that I went to, when I went private, they said it may be an NHS acceptable tolerance, but it's not an acceptable tolerance if you're hoping to have kids in the future, because if you have an overactive thyroid, your THS levels are high. So they said that the THS levels should be about 2.5. So mine was 2.8. They said if you went on to then have kids, like be pregnant, she goes, what people tend to find is they get pregnant, they may lose the child, God forbid. They'll lose a child, and then when they ask and push for an investigation as to the reason why they lost the child, they find that the woman had a high THS level, and that is it basically causes miscarriages and amongst other things. So luckily, going private has meant that I was able to have that diagnosed, and they gave me tablets. And last week they did another test. They did a blood test to assess the THS levels, and it had gone down to 1.8. So it's within now an acceptable tolerance. But I thought to myself, how many of my black queens know this? Because you see, NHS are not going to do things unless you ask them, unfortunately. But they'll do all these tests. But how many of you have had your hormone test, ask for a hormone test and say, I want a hormone test and I want to know my THS levels? If you're able to afford Gucci slides, if you're able to afford Yeezys, anything designer, you can pay £250 and go to a private hospital and get tested for these things. For those of you with private medical care, I think you are able to do that. For me, I didn't want my premiums to go up. Let me not lie to you. That's why I didn't do it through my medical insurance, and I was happy to pay privately, just independently. And it was probably the best £250 I've ever spent in my life, because, you know, since I've now been given those tablets to take and my THS levels have gone down, my mood's changed. My mood's changed a lot, in case I'm a lot more, you know, balanced. Whereas when I'm on period, hey, sometimes I don't talk. Kay will just be asking me, am I okay? I don't eat, I don't nothing. I'm just moody cow, you know. But it's, for me, the more concern is for women choosing to have kids in the future and not knowing that your THS levels, your hormone levels, all these things. This is why I say to people, it's all well and good to wake up one morning and decide you want to have kids, but there's all this stuff, all this preliminary stuff that you have to do as well. And not just because you want to have kids or what, you know, because there are women that don't want to have kids, but it's also about understanding what's happening in your body from a hormonal level, from a fallopian tube level. Internally, you need to be able to look at the scan and have a look and see what's happening. They should be able to point certain things out to you, give you the measurements of, you know, if you have fibroids, what are those measurements, and you be able to compare it year on year. Again, I do understand that there is a privilege in being able to go private. I'm not saying or trying to suggest otherwise. But what I am saying is, as black women, we don't have the access to NHS healthcare in the way that our non-black counterparts do. So if there is a way we can access that medical care through private means, then I will definitely encourage you all to do that. If not, and you have to go through the NHS, then you have to be very forceful about asking them for hormone testing and asking them the level and going online and seeing what the level should be. And if they say, oh, it's within acceptable tolerance, and say, well, it's still high, you can ask for medication, you know. And unfortunately, some of us have to be ad hoc Google doctors to be able to access this information. So I'm happy that I'm able to share this with you all. And a few people, and I'd said it on Instagram, a few people sent me a DM and was like, Toy, this is amazing information, I didn't know this. So hopefully it'll be able to reach a lot more people on the podcast. So hopefully that will help you all. I want to quickly move on to Jackie Aina. So we all know who Jackie Aina is. I don't want to get into the whole, we all know who she is. I want to read something that was on Twitter, and then I will give my own opinion, because I've not given my opinion on the whole Jackie Aina thing. Dear non-Nigerians, the reason why this is receiving so much backlash is because Jackie Aina shamelessly named one of her candles Sore Soke, which translates into speak up. It was one of the rallying cries during EndSARS, but Jackie was notably silent during the protest. We know what happened. We watched it, we saw it on social media, on Instagram Live with EndSARS, and what happened on the toll gate. A lot of innocent people who were there to protest and exercise their freedom of speech and freedom to protest were massacred. It was a massacre. And I remember just feeling helpless, watching it and thinking, Nigeria, is this where Nigeria is now? And the president of Nigeria, Buhari, basically using the massacre to issue a threat to Nigerians who wish to protest in, retaliation for what we witnessed. And then we single-handedly watch Nigerian government basically gaslight everybody and say it didn't happen. Whenever I think about what happened at the toll gate, my heart just breaks. Because even as it stands now, there's been no acceptance from the Nigerian government about what happened that day. They even tried to cover it up by saying it didn't happen. All these things. But Sore Soke was the words of the last words of a lot of people who were murdered. So for Jackie Aina to think as is she first generation, second generation Nigerian, that is okay to name her candles that, is absolutely deplorable. It's disgusting, because it is consumerism at its finest. Now, Jackie Aina at the time, when she was asked to bring awareness to what was happening in Nigeria at the time, Jackie Aina basically said that she needs to go and do research. We've seen all the things. It's not like he said, she said. She wrote it there on the Twitter. So for her now to develop her candles, naming it Sore Soke, is this the conclusion of the research? Because I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, what Jackie Aina did was commercializing black trauma in a way that is so dangerous, because there's she has a lot of African American fans. She has a lot of African diaspora fans in the diaspora. And I feel that there's a lot of education that she could have given at the time that this was happening, and she chose not to do it. So to think that she thinks that she can now use words that are so emotionally triggering and put them on a candle is nothing short of disgusting. But I'm gonna say this, and I don't care who adds her. I don't really give a shit. I've never really liked Jackie Aina. I don't vibe with her. I don't connect with her. But I do respect that in an industry like YouTube, being, one of the, first black YouTubers to really push, visually being able to see a black woman do what she has done. Like, to be honest, we have to give her flowers. We do. Because there's people that came up around the same time as Jackie Aina that, to be honest, we don't know where they are. As a black woman, Jackie Aina took influence into another level. And as much as... And I was watching something the other day on TikTok, and it's true. As much as people want to cancel Jackie, she will never be cancelled because of this situation. Because Jackie, even though she does some questionable things, she is still one of those OGs in the YouTube influencing space. And I don't know what it is about our community that when we're holding somebody accountable, we accept an apology and we will forgive them, but we don't stick around for the change behavior. Jackie Aina has since released a statement, and I want to read that statement to you. See me, I'm always giving context. I always give context. So no one can say, Toya is biased. I'm not a biased person. I'm an honest person. I tell you the truth. Hello, everyone. As the brand owner of Forever Mood, I understand our decision has severely hurt members of my Nigerian community with the naming of the candle Sore Soke. We missed the mark on this, and it will never happen again. Empowerment and respect is the ethos of Forever, and that was unfortunately not properly conveyed in the naming of the candle. We accept full responsibility, and I recognize the gravity of this error. To that effect, this candle will be pulled from the market and production immediately. I apologize for the hurt this has caused, and I thank you for holding us accountable. Jackie Aina and Forever Mood team. But Jackie, it's not about us, it's about you. It's not holding us accountable. We're not holding your business as in Forever Mood. We're holding you accountable. You are a Nigerian woman, albeit you are first or second generation Nigerian, but you should have known better. You see, when white people do this shit, we will really lambast them. We will talk about appropriation. We'll do all these things. But when it comes from somebody who is from the culture, who is born in the culture, that is when it becomes, to me, a severe problem. And it becomes a severe problem because I feel like there's a lot of people in the diaspora that I feel are jumping onto this wave of Nigeria or Africa as a whole. And they're jumping on because now I feel like through music, the culture has been heavily commercialized, which means when we start commercializing things, we're now talking about money. And I just feel like Jackie Aina didn't take the time to educate herself because I feel like she's just riding the wave of what's in trend. I personally don't understand how witnessing and seeing the effects of, NSARS and what happened in the Tollgate massacre in Nigeria, how anybody could think that it's appropriate to put Sore Soke on candles. I personally don't get it. I really don't. And there was one post that was on Twitter that really summed it up, and the person said, this conversation about Jackie Aina is a good time to point out that we as diaspora Africans need to know our place. If you don't have enough knowledge about homeland topics to talk about it or utilize it, find people who do, educate yourself, or just be quiet. And I could have put it better myself. Now, I definitely believe that Jackie Aina has a responsibility, whether she likes it or not. If you're going to take people's money, if you're going to get all these sponsorship deals and people are going to be influenced by you, you have to take a responsibility. And what I have learned from Jackie Aina through this situation is she's about her money. And that is the ultimate focus, because the candles that she was doing, she did in a way. The candles that she has in that collection that she's named Owambe, that Owambe, she doesn't even really, I don't think she knows what it is, because even the Owambe colours was not present during the release of, she did one party release, one press release thing. And I know Owambe it's part of the Yoruba culture, and I can't help but feel like Jackie Aina has been very disrespectful. And you see this statement that she gave, apparently she didn't post it on her personal handle, it was on the Forever Mood business that she owns. And that in itself, if that's the truth, that says it all. But personally for me, I think Jackie Aina is quite lost in the understanding of what real Nigerian culture is. Not the commercialized Nigerian culture, but the real indigenous Nigerian culture. I think that there is I have a lot of friends who are in America, and they really know culture, they really know themselves or know where they're from. But there are a small minority of people who are African Americans in America that really don't know the culture. They just know the culture to be Burna Boy and Wizkid, and it's really sad. It's really sad because Nigeria is so rich in history, and all it would require one to do is pick up a book, download Audible, listen to an audiobook, and really take the time to educate yourselves. And I think that, again, it's more than just going there on holiday and going to Lagos and eating suya and kelishi on the roadside. Nigeria is so much more. And a lot of the problems that are happening in Nigeria are really, really tragic. I know there's a lot of shootings and murders and kidnappings that happen in the east of Nigeria, where I'm from. And, that leads me to something else as well. Like, I've heard the story about Igbo landing, and I've never actually read the book. And I think part of it is fear. Because I know as a tribe, as an Igbo tribe, we have gone through a lot. We have had our own massacres. We have been slaughtered. And I know that there's a lot of, of the older generation that will tell you about their own experiences. Like, my uncle is still traumatized to this day in relation to the Biafra War. He's never spoken about it to any one of us. And my dad always said when he went to serve, he didn't come back the same person. So to read the story of Igbo landing, oh my God. It broke my heart, but there was a beauty in the conviction of my Igbo tribe to not be at the mercy of the white people who were seeking to abuse and enslave them. To read that story is to truly understand how beautiful Igbo culture is, and I can't wait to read even more books. And Igbo Land, and I wish I had read it earlier. I just mentally wasn't in a space where I felt like I could deal with it, and I was very emotional when I was reading it. It was so sad, especially when you see some of the pictures, and you can see in a lot of music they've depicted a lot of what's happening in Igbo landing. And in my head I'm like, this is not for music or something, but for awareness of what happened during the Igbo landing, I encourage people to really go and do your research. But in Nigeria as a culture as a whole, it's such a beautiful culture. Jackie Aina didn't miss the mark. The mark wasn't even there in the first place. And all I'm going to say is, non-black people are not counselling people just like that. They give people opportunity to kind of come back. And effectively, that's exactly what's going to happen in our community. But I think what we need to do is hold Jackie Aina accountable when she now tap dances into Nigerian culture. Like, we need to see evidence of doing the work. We need to see that evidence of doing the work, because what she did was just so disrespectful on so many levels, because she's commercializing something that's so triggering. And when it gets into the hands of non-Nigerians or non-black people, they will misuse those words, sorosoke. And there lies a big problem. Why is it that we can't protect what is so sacred in our culture, but we have other cultures outside of Nigeria, outside of the black culture as well, and you dare not mention certain things about their culture because they understand how sacred it is? But I just find when it comes to us in our culture, we're so willing to disrespect certain sacred things, and then what happens is outside the culture, when people disrespect, we want to get angry, but we are teaching them how to disrespect certain things that are sacred by not making them sacred ourselves, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's it on Jackie Aina, to be honest. Something I wanted to quickly, actually before I get on to that, the main topic of this episode is called the model minority. And I've spoken about Rishi Sunak already. For those of you outside of the UK, Rishi Sunak is the former Chancellor of the Exchequer of the UK. And after all the hullabaloo with the Prime Minister, who is still Boris Johnson, but he will be stepping down because he has basically a vote of no confidence. So now what is happening here in the UK is the battle to see who will now become the Conservative leader and in turn become the Prime Minister of the UK. Now, it's not going to go to any election, a public election. It's actually the Conservative Party who are voting and electing their next leader. Rishi Sunak, to be honest, has really shocked me through this process. And I think it's because he is what you would consider the model minority. So what do I mean by that? It's the token. So in the workplace, some of us are the only black woman. In a workplace, you are the model minority, or at least they're trying to make you into the model minority. But it's tokenism. The problem with Rishi Sunak is so far out of touch with the British public. One has to really question, where did they bring this guy up? Has he ever been to any type of Tottenham before? The answer is no. He is a rich kid, trust fund kid. He started his career as investment analyst at Goldman Sachs. Did you know that? Then he went on to work in a hedge fund. This is a man that has had and been afforded every opportunity. He's also married to a billionaire. Yeah? So when we're looking at Rishi Sunak, we need to look at him holistically. Now, the thing with the Conservative Party is generally the leaders are very out of touch with the general public. And I don't think the Conservative Party has the best interest of the working class. In fact, we know that. Recently, Rishi Sunak was given a speech in Tunbridge Wells. I need to research. I think he's the MP of that constituency. I'm not too sure. Either way, he was given a speech and it had been recorded. And basically he said that he wants to take away certain investments in urban communities and plough it into Tunbridge Wells. If you know anything about Tunbridge Wells, which is in Kent, it is very rich area. Yeah? Very rich, very conservative area. So my question to you is, when you say you want to take from urban areas, effectively what you're saying is you want to take from the poorer areas to reinvest in the richer areas that already have riches. So how exactly does that make this man capable of being the Prime Minister of the UK? I'm going to say it right now. Rishi Sunak is the model minority because I find, especially with white-dominated industries, like in the world of work, or in this case, a white-dominated party like the Conservative Party, he is the person that they're quite happy to pull his strings. I've said it before in a past episode, I'll say it again. When it comes to Asian people, the white man will choose an Asian person over a black person when it comes to certain leadership roles, as we are seeing here, the Conservative. This country is not ready for any type of black Prime Minister. I'm telling you, they're more ready for an Asian Prime Minister than a black Prime Minister. And let's explore the reason why. If you really think about it, a lot of places that we've worked in, I feel like as a community, the Asian community really stick together. And I actually admire how they focus on education. And this is, in my opinion. And I don't know why, and I can only put it down to the fact that there is a historical endemic issue that some white people have towards black people, whereby even if we're the only option, if there is a chance to pick at someone else or another race, the white man will opt for the Asian man. And I say man, but not the man as in the figurative, And I feel like Rishi Sunak is that person. He's that model minority. He went to a private school. He's from a rich background. That is who they're willing to accept. Now, that black lady that was running, the Nigerian lady, Kemi, unfortunately, Kemi needs to understand, no matter how much she was throwing Nigeria under the bus and the politics under the bus, they were never going to pick her. Because they have their model minority in Rishi Sunak, who they will choose time and time again over her. However, I've spoken to some of my Asian friends, and we have very candid conversations. And they said it to me. They said, Toya, I'm just going to let you know, there's no way a black person will be made prime minister over an Asian person. It's not going to happen. Not probably in our lifetime. And that is literally because of preference. And when my friend said this to me, I was shocked, because we never really had that level of candid conversation, because sometimes as well, it's about situations that give rise to that conversation. And one of my friends, she said, listen, I need you to understand something. She said, as not every community, but Asians generally, we will align ourselves with the white man because we know that a white man will give us access. They give us access because we're willing to play the game in a way that black people don't play the game. Black people as a community have gone through a lot. And I'm going to tell you guys something. To have a black prime minister is a reminder of everything that this empire has done towards black countries, like in Africa and the Caribbean. We would have to then have that conversation about reparations and the slave trade, and an acknowledgement from the British Empire and the British government of the British Empire's role in slavery. They're not they're not willing to do that. And to see a black prime minister is to be confronted with that every day. They don't have that issue with Asian people. They don't have that issue because what has happened historically during the slave trade, what has happened in terms of the slaughtering and the treatment of black people generally, history speaks for itself. So unfortunately, because we're still working through that, because the British Empire itself is so endemically racist, they're not ready to confront the atrocities perpetrated in Africa and the Caribbean. The slave trade was an atrocity. And we can already see that this country ain't ready to have that conversation because we are still seeing the stolen artifacts in the British Museum. So if we're seeing those things and they're still being kept in the British Museum, and they're still holding on to the history of slavery like a trophy. What about the conversation about the slave owner statues? You know, I was walking past these statues not thinking anything, not realising I'm walking past memorials of slave owners. You know, this country, I'm sorry, the UK are not ready for a black prime. It's not true. They are really ready, more so for an Asian prime minister. And you can see it in the way that an Asian person will get close to it. So to be the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak is close to being the prime minister. Do you understand? In a way that a black person has never had that proximity. And we see that in the world of work. We see it a lot in the world of work. I have to tell you, what happens in politics is usually what plays out in the world of work. I have never worked anywhere before and seen a black female CEO. I've never seen it before. I've seen an Asian CEO, but even if you were to see a black person in a director level, they're a couple of levels lower than that Asian CEO or Asian CFO. And I don't know, as a community, Asian people have been able to navigate white spaces in a way that the white man doesn't see them as a threat. The white man sees black people as a threat. And I don't know whether they think that we're seeking retribution for the slave trade. I don't know what that is. But what usually plays out in politics usually plays out in the world of work. When I was thinking about what the model minority looks like, I feel like black people can never be really the model minority, because to be that would mean we have to almost denounce or pretend that our history hasn't shaped us and our lives. The history of our ancestors has shaped all of our lives. I mean, for example, when we talk about BAME, and I've already got a podcast episode on BAME. I've told you it's so dangerous, because what the white man has done in creating BAME is unwillingness to accept the individuality of ethnicity. Instead, they throw you into a melting pot and say, oh, well, BAME, as a way to distance themselves to dealing with the real issues that affect the black community. I feel that BAME is a threat to, it's like a thinly veiled threat, that they're unwilling to acknowledge black people standing alone away from other ethnicities. And we do stand away from because all our experiences are different. The Asian experience is very different to the black experience. I know for a fact that when I sit down and have a conversation with my Asian friends and find out their experiences, I'm often surprised because the dynamics of their experiences are so completely different from ours. That's not to say Asian people don't experience racism. Definitely so. Of course they do. But it is experienced in a very different way to black people, in a way that I can't necessarily relate to the source of the reasons why racism is perpetrated towards an Asian person, because the motivations are different when it is levied towards a black person. And when I sat down with my friend and I broke it down like that, she says, you know what, Toya, I never really understood it like that, but I get it. She listens to the podcast, she gets it. And I'm not trying to undermine, the experiences of other ethnicities or ethnic minorities in their experiences. But I can only talk and relate to the black experience as a black woman. And I can only talk about the things that I have witnessed in the world of work and the things that I continue to see. Now, when we talk about things like this and we really dissect race, it's a sensitive subject. But again, what plays out in politics usually plays out in the workplace. So there's nothing we're seeing now in the race for the Conservative leader that we haven't seen in the world of work. The only difference is I don't think they have been as ruthless to Kemi as they would be in the world of work towards black women. I have been in organisations where I'm clearly the most qualified, clearly the most educated, and clearly the most experienced, but they would choose any other race, including Asian people, over me. And I often used to think it was because I wasn't good enough. And I realised that sometimes in the way this country is not ready for a black prime minister, some organisations aren't ready for a black female CEO. And rightly or wrongly, until we see change on a governmental level, it's difficult to see change in a domestic level in the world of work. It's difficult. It's difficult. That's why when I saw Deborah in my old workplace, as a director, and she wasn't CEO or anything, it's just as a director, I was in awe of her because I haven't seen that before. In my whole career, I've never seen that. And I was enamored by how she navigated to get to that space. And I already knew that she was slaying lions and tigers and bears to even get to that role. And then how she lost that role is very endemic of the fact that in order to be the model minority, there are people who hold that power that want to control you. And as soon as you decide that you want to think autonomously, they will rip the rug from underneath you. And that's exactly what happened to Deborah. She was amazing at what she did. She delivered, but she wasn't going to be the puppet. She wasn't. She managed things the way she did. And, yes, she made mistakes, but like everybody else does because they're human. But her mistakes were always magnified. And I know it's because she's a black woman. I'm almost quite interested to see kind of how politics will evolve, because there's going to come a day of reckoning whereby the government are going to have no choice but to really, really sit down and accept and actually say it. The role of the British Empire is the slave trade, and actually really talk about certain things that continue to operate in society that further pushes the racist agenda. Because we see it all the time, even in the way that black women are depicted in the media, in a way that white women would never be depicted. It's this level of micro-violence that continues to perpetrate its way in society that lets me know that this country is not ready for the model minority
to be a black person, because it's about control. And if you think about it, if you actually take a step back and really look at society as a whole, has it really progressed? Has it? We are hearing so many stories about the Metropolitan Police and the level of corruption that is endemic in the police. We hear about, some of the things that happen on a police level. It makes you think, hang on a minute, these are people we are paying to protect us. The model minority. I've decided within my mind years ago that I don't have the ability to be the model minority, because to be that is to also allow someone to pull my strings and to remove any autonomy in me just actually stepping into what it is I would want to do as a leader. I'm not trying to aspire to be a CEO. I'm not doing it because I'm not willing to walk on eggshells, knowing that I'm not fully in control of my CEO-ship. I'm willing to be director, but I know what that comes with. And I feel like in any organisation I have gone to before, the reason why I've had to, and I talk more when I was perm, the reason why I was unable to progress is because the ceiling was always lower for me, a black woman. And there was no opportunity for them to make that ceiling higher or to create a role, especially for me. It was almost though I had to accept that this is as far as I would go. And that's ultimately the main motivation for me going contracting, because the ceiling was always low. And I realised if I wanted to be senior in my career, in my profession, I would have to go contracting and work in different organisations and get my seniority through that level of experience in a way that I could never get in an organisation. How can I be in an organisation for almost 2 years, literally running a particular division? This division is an international division. We're talking about China, we're talking about Australia, we're talking about the US, and countries going into contracts going into really high profile, avenues in the States. And then I'm there for almost 2 years, and I'm looking for progress, and I'm hearing crickets. Then I'm finding out somebody who has less experience than me, lot less educated than me, is on money almost 10 to 20,000 pounds more than me. Then you're asking me to train that person so that they could be more senior than I am, and you just want to keep me in this box. Do you remember how we opened this episode? If we don't handle our independence very well, colonizers will come back in the form of investors. It's the same in the world of work. If you don't manage your career, if you don't become that subject matter expert, if you don't financially invest in your development yourself, if you don't understand that you are the architect of your career and success, the colonizer will come in the shape of an oppressor, in the shape of a ceiling, to keep you there. And what happens is when they keep you there, you become used to this ceiling. You begin to convince yourself that this is where you're supposed to be. And then you'll look back in a few years and see that you allowed someone else to hold the key and hold the pen to your success. And this has always been one of my driving forces. No one is going to be the architect to my career. I am that architect. And ultimately, if it means that I'm not the model minority, I don't care. Because actually, I'm breaking free from the shackles of the career oppressor. Yes, a career oppressor. I don't want that. I never wanted that for myself. When I realised that I could stay in an organisation 2 years and they could comfortably keep me in that position because they never thought that I would, hit that point, or because there's no other opportunities for me, but they're happy to keep me there. The question is, why are you so comfortable with my stagnation? Why is that okay for you? And it's okay for you because, as far as you're concerned as a black woman, I shouldn't want more than what you're willing to give. Then you have to take.
You have to take back the control of your career and take back that power to want more for yourself. And I make no apologies for my success. I don't make any apologies for my growth. I make no apologies for my financial success. I make no apologies because sacrifice has been given at the gate, at the door. But what I continue to remind myself is that when I made the decision to take control of my career, I also made the decision that there'll come a point whereby, for example, I said to you guys the other day that I wouldn't completely rule out a perm. I have to go in as a very senior or a director, and I don't know a lot of these organizations if they're ready for that, because I'm looking on their websites and I'm just seeing a sea of white faces. I'm not seeing any black person. And that's really difficult, because then my question is, how can I see myself in those senior director roles if on a board level there's just a sea of white people? So what, do I continue contracting and just live my best life? What does that look like for me? And this is something that I'm going to continue to explore and have conversation about here on the Toy Talks podcast. But the beginning is identifying that identify within yourself how you've allowed yourself to fall victim of the career oppressor. Why is it that you're not breaking free and aspiring for more? Why? What is that? What is keeping you still? What's keeping you oppressed? Because from where I'm standing as a black woman, we haven't got the time to stay oppressed for years before we recognise that we're the architect of our career, and to take control. And taking control is often just making the decision to apply for that role, apply to that competitor, to take the leap of faith and go contracting. The best thing I ever did in my entire career. The very best thing I ever did. Okay, so we have a dilemma. So I'm just going to go to the dilemma. Actually, let me bring it up on my phone. And I thought it was quite an interesting dilemma for this episode. I thought it sat quite well in this episode. And it's entitled, "How would you respond to performative allyship in the workplace?" So you can see it actually fits quite well with this episode. Hi Toya, I hope this meets you well. Firstly, I'd like to thank you for all that you do. I've been listening to your podcast for almost a year, and the learnings that I have taken have been life-changing. Recently, I was on a graduate program in financial services earning 30k per annum. Your podcasts encouraged me to be confident in my skills and all that I bring to the table. I applied for an open role, purchased your interview masterclass, and was able to secure a promotion with an 80% salary increase. Bloody hell. 80%. Wow. I am still shooketh, so thank you so much for all that you do. My question. Alongside my BAU, I help drive recruitment into the organisation through engaging with senior management and external partners. I am a black woman, and it's quite frustrating being in rooms where no one looks like me. At the moment, there's a huge focus on DEI. So I'd like to ask you, how would you respond to performative allyship in the workplace, especially when it's from senior leadership? Thanks for taking the time to read this note. For those of you who are unsure about what the acronym DEI stands for, it stands for Diversity, Equity and Inclusion. Performative allyship. Well, to be honest, we experienced performative allyship and it was polarised during the period in which George Floyd was murdered. And people were performing because we had organisations and businesses and brands doing the black squares, yet never centering black people. Maybe, for some of you who you may have forgotten, I haven't forgotten any of it. And I think when it came at that time to organisations, a lot of organisations that were performative, because I got a lot of emails about performative allyship, whereby basically they would hold themselves out to be allies, but actually do nothing practical to furnish that allyship. So this is what I'm going to say, because you've asked me how, the question was, I'd like to ask you, how would you respond to performative allyship in the workplace, especially when it's from senior leadership? Well, I'll give you an example, and this will bring it to life. So last year, I was asked to speak, do a public speaking. Now, this organisation basically had a lot of performative allyship, and it came mainly from senior management. And it was reinforced during the murder of George Floyd, where it polarised Black Lives Matter. And the organisation made a statement, they were doing all of this performative shit. And it's performative shit because they didn't do any of the follow through, so it's just lip service. So what they did at the time was they put together a committee of Black people to advise the organisation about how to better service Black people within the organisation. And this organisation, this particular group of people pissed. They were like, first of all, it's not our role. You're still not understanding, what's going on here. It's not our role to teach you how to work with, understand, support and encourage Black people. That's not our job. And for you to place that on us in itself is a macroaggression. So they all got together and they said, all right, you know what? He needs to put his money where his mouth is. Since he has put together this group of people, then we're going to force them to hold themselves accountable. So, long story short, these group of people decided to get me in, and they said that they want someone to come in and speak to the organisation about, working whilst Black in the workplace effectively. And they want the senior managers to join, and they want to create an opportunity for people to share and learn and grow. And there needs to be a presence from senior management to support what's happening. And these people said, you know what, Toya, we don't just want you to come and do this. We want, you to also do an audit of kind of how people have been treated since the resurgence of Black Lives Matter, and then we want to use that to hold senior management accountable for actually addressing a lot of the endemic racism within this organisation, and get them to make pledges so that we can hold them accountable as they would do with our objectives every year. And that's exactly what happened. And I thought it was really smart, because this organisation was happy to throw money at bringing external people in, but they weren't willing to do the work, because for them it wasn't their problem. Hence why they put together this committee of Black professionals who they felt were to be a voice. And by the time we finished doing the talk, one of the senior managers actually called me and asked me to give a very honest view, and I did that. And she says she feels ashamed because her husband is Black. And actually what she found in herself is that she felt as though she was doing enough as an ally because of her Black husband, but realising that in the world of work, where she's working with other Black people who are deeply affected by what happened at with the murder of George Floyd, but also kind of dealing with other issues around being Black in the workplace, that she hadn't given it a second thought about the fact that she wasn't doing enough. And I did respect her honesty, to be honest. So the reason I give that example is you need to get to a point of holding allies accountable by getting them to do certain things. I think that if you are part of a DEI, if you're in a position of some type of influence, then I would suggest that you get them to make pledges and get them to follow through on those pledges. Now, you can always book me. I'm quite happy to do like remote courses, or to come into your organisation and do a presentation on working whilst Black and focus on a particular topic. But it's going to be the follow-on work that comes from that. It is going to be having deeper conversations about navigating the world of work whilst black and what that actually looks like. And also asking these so-called performative allies, what is it that they're willing to do? And the thing is, some of them don't know what to do. I've realised that some of them don't know what to do. And you have to be clear about what it is that you want them to do. Do you know what I mean? You've got to be clear about what is the outcome that you're seeking. You know, if we're going to be talk about kind of what, you know, how to deal with performative allyship, then what is it that you want from them? Because it needs to be a healthy dialogue of saying what you want versus how you're going to get it. Get the external speakers in. I don't believe in having white people coming into organisations talking about diversity, equity and inclusion. I don't understand how a white person can come in and publicly speak about that. They're not part of that conversation insofar as understanding what it is as black people or ethnic minorities, knowing what we go through. White people are not part of that journey. They're part of it from the perspective of us, in this case black women, being on the receiving end of the performative allyship. So I hope that helps. Go on my website, toyatalks.com, and, you know, I do public speaking events. I do come into organisations, but I think the first step is to also understand what it is that you want from your performative allies. What is it that you want? What type of change are you looking for? Having a healthy dialogue to say, I think we need an external person to come in and have these conversations with us to enable us to reaffirm the pledges that were once made, or to make pledges so that it can be a safe and comfortable environment for all. It's a long journey. It is a very long journey, but the first step is getting your allies to recognise that there is a problem and they are needed to affect change. Their influence is needed to affect that change. Anyway, hope that helps. So listen, I know in this episode we've spoken about a couple of topics here, but for me, there was a few things that happened last week that I thought was quite pertinent to talk about. I think the model minority aspect of this episode was important to talk about too, because, you know, like I said, what happens in politics and in the government is reflective of what happens in the world of work, and we can link it back, you know. There are a few episodes that I have done the treatment for, and I'm ready to kind of start rolling it out, but start recording. And I think it's really important as well, as a community of black women that we are, that congregate and listen to this episode and talk about it in your group chats. It's important for us to really understand where we exist in society, what we want from ourselves, how we view success, how we define that success, how we are navigating these non-black spaces. You know, how are we as black women holding ourselves accountable for our own success? Being the model minority isn't really an option. We've got too much history for that. For those of you who do not know, obviously toyatalks.com, I do masterclasses. And the masterclasses are, again, to teach, guide and advise black women how to navigate the world of work and in turn highlight the path of your success. I have launched the Toya Talks Academy. The Toya Talks Academy is an opportunity for me to share various masterclasses for you to learn, to grow. I will be including quizzes. There will be templates, attachments to certain masterclasses, but also as well, it is an opportunity for learning and growing. For example, we have the probation masterclass. You heard in the dilemma, we've got the interview skills masterclass. We've got the salary negotiation masterclass, the redundancy masterclass, and the very popular CV masterclass as well. For those people who have already purchased masterclasses, we have up until the 13th. I've given everyone in the team to get in contact with you, all who have already previously purchased masterclasses, so that we can give you a free coupon code to repurchase your previously purchased masterclass for free. And what happens is, in the academy, you have a dashboard of all your masterclasses, all the quizzes and templates. It's actually amazing. To that end, you know, it hasn't been easy to kind of launch this to launch the academy. We've had a few blips. I'm not going to lie, we've had a couple of blips, and I think it is the idea of having an academy, and I can understand now why people don't have them. It's a lot of work, and there's a lot of financial investment, time investment, and making sure the website is running
in the way it should do. I know that there's been a couple of people having access issues to their dashboard, so having to work through that and, you know, get them their accesses and stuff. So it's been a lot, but ultimately I know that in order for me to kind of continue the work of Toya Talks, the masterclasses and the Toya Talks Academy is necessary. So I want to thank each and every one of you who have purchased masterclasses. As you heard in the dilemma, the feedback on the masterclasses is amazing. It really is amazing. And I'm really proud to have created an academy that really truly helps my community to become successful in navigating the world of work, to attain the success that we deserve, to attain the success that we have worked hard for. And having the academy and also having the podcast also reinforces the knowledge that needs to be ever present within our community, because we're not taught a lot of these things that we talk about on the podcast every week or on the masterclasses. We're not really taught it. You know, you learn by trial, by error, mistake, or word of mouth. But we have an academy that collectively has all the information in one place. So if you haven't already, make sure you go and check out the masterclasses on the toyatalks.com website. If you want to follow me on social media, I am on Instagram. My personal Instagram page is Toya_Washington. My Twitter handle is Toya_W with the hashtag Toya Talks or Toya Talks Podcast. If you would like to follow me on TikTok, it's Toya Washington. I need to upload some new TikToks as well. I will be planning some webinars as well on the toyatalks.com website. So if you haven't already, make sure you fill in your details for the newsletter, because newsletters will be coming out and it will be giving you the dates of webinars and things like that. I know a lot of you are wanting a Toya Talks Live, so make sure you sign up to the newsletter on the website and follow me on social media, because that's where I will be announcing these things first. If you want to follow me on Snapchat, which is the original birthplace of the Toya Talks platform, it is Toya_Washington. And I'm going to leave it there. Thank you all so much for joining me. I hope you found this episode useful. Make sure you share it, talk about it in your group chats. If there are people that you know that can benefit from the Toya Talks podcast, please share the episode or previous episodes with them. Share the website. The more we share about the existence of the Toya Talks platform, is the more as Black women we can commune and teach and guide and actually attain the knowledge that will lead us to success. That to me is my objective. Of course, if you don't already know, I do have a YouTube channel, At Home with Toya. I will be uploading a new vlog shortly. It's just a lot of work between the academy and the vlogging and everything else and the wedding coming up. It has been a lot. However, no condition is permanent, and as the days are progressing, I'm coming ever closer to my wedding blessing date, which I cannot wait to get my life back once that is done. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. You all know that if you have a work-related dilemma or a life-related dilemma that you know that we'll be able to address here on the Toya Talks podcast, make sure you email hello@toyatalks.com. Put your dilemma in the subject box and make it clear that it is a dilemma. Be clear about what outcome you are seeking. Keep it clear, concise and straight to the point. Your anonymity will always be protected, and we'll address it here on the Toya Talks podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I will see you all again next week. My name is Toya Washington, and you have been listening to the Toya Talks podcast.